We are back. Not only in regards to the My Hero Academia story, with Horikoshi having taken a 1-week break off, but also when it comes to this very channel, plot armor. Yet again, after having lost our channel for 4 entire months just last year to false copyright strikes, for the last 2 weeks or so, we have been unable to provide you all the content you deserve, which ultimately culminated into what was our momentary termination. Something that absolutely should not have happened, but it did, and thanks to the power of plot armor, as opposed to months of waiting, we were back in a single day. There is plenty more to be said on that subject, so if you really rock with us, stick around until the end of the video, because we seriously need to talk about this latest chapter of My Hero Academia, which was absolutely insane, mind you. But before we get into all that, this video is sponsored by Core. Now, Core is really something special. Powered by the Unreal Engine, Core is a platform that is not only free to play, but free to create. It's pretty impressive how many different sorts of titles are available, from shooters to role-playing games. There's something for just about anyone. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I didn't expect to, but I definitely spent a few hours playing Kingdom Fall. There's a My Hero Academia game I'm sure a ton of you would care to try, but for me, Kingdom Fall was a weird sort of nostalgic feel that I really enjoyed. And listen, new games are made each and every day for you all to enjoy, and even do so with your friends. So with that in mind, you can add me as a friend by searching Slice of Otaku, and also find a link to Core in the description. Thank you so much to our friends at Core for sponsoring the video, but with that being said, let's get into this. So with the previous chapter, we followed the likes of Yoshindo and Tatami Nakagame, 2 senior Hero Corps students at Ketsubutsu High we first met during the provisional license exam arc. Intending to fulfill their civic duty, they had entered an endangered zone in hopes of convincing the remaining populace to evacuate and take shelter at their school. However, the civilians weren't having it, as they no longer possessed any faith in the now tattered mecca of heroics, regardless of however strong these kids proposed themselves to be. Having now failed, the two would leave just as the likes of Muscular, who leapt from building to building, would descend and crash towards them, full of murderous intent. Tatami would rush back to the civilians, while Shindo was left to face the fiend in what was a bloody and downright overwhelming battle. One that nearly saw his demise. But just then, entering behind a massive blow, it was Deku, now prepared and ready to save the day. And if you missed out, we actually covered this chapter in its entirety over on our Instagram page at PlotArmorYT, and so for those of you who may have missed our commentary, it is there for you at your leisure. Now with this latest chapter, we'd have Deku looking down towards Muscular with the very same mask physics as Jotaro's hat from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And in seeing him, Muscular was absolutely thrilled. That voice, that punch, it was Deku. Now, something interesting to note about Deku's current appearance, beyond it all being in tatters, would be his eyes. His eyes are very reminiscent of All Might's, blacked out with the illuminated pupils, and at that, I suppose the question then becomes, is this merely a stylistic addition or a canonical one? Perhaps this is an aspect of One for All afforded to those without quirks, seeing as that's a similarity particularly focused upon as of late. And as cool as that would be, I highly doubt it to be the case, considering we do get to see him without the mask at the end of the chapter, and his eyes look pretty normal. Regardless, having Deku actually use the mask aspect of his costume is pretty nice. And again, Muscular was just so overjoyed to see Deku here, as he was sick of beating down fodder and wanted a real challenge. He'd tell Deku not to run away as he broke down a rock in his hand. And interestingly enough, it wasn't as if he had plots of revenge on his mind or anything of the sort. He's not the type of villain that has a grandiose plan or vision, at least not anything worth talking extensively about. It's just as simple as he likes to use his quirk as he pleases, that perhaps he would have been satisfied by a good old rampage before. But like a junkie who's just discovered a new high after facing the likes of Deku, he could never turn back from that sort of thrill. And this sicko would say all this as he casually embedded the rock he'd crushed into his empty eye socket as it bled from the insertion. Now this move was many levels of deranged, but boy does it serve to be an incredible characterization. I mean, the sheer fact that he was able to crush such a large piece of rubble into a nearly perfect size with such expedience makes it clear just how precisely he is able to control his own strength, and that is downright chilling. Following this, he would in an instant leap in Deku's direction, but not directly towards him, but rather towards the building, as he would upheave the top of it entirely, as if he was just popping the trunk of a car. Muscular wanted his rematch, and he wanted it now. And at this point, an incredible amount of smoke was overtaking the area, as Deku would swiftly pass Shindo over to Tatami. Deku would then tell her to get him some immediate care and that they don't need to worry about any more casualties to come. She would agree, but was unsure of who she was speaking to despite the familiarity of his voice on account of all the smoke. And because of this, with the exception of Muscular here, the secrecy of Deku's identity would be preserved for the time being. But now leaping back into the action, Deku would wonder to himself if he had gone a bit overboard, as just then, the 6th user of One for All would apparate. This being within Deku's mind, but as a sort of projected form, perhaps for the sake of his own sanity. A really cool addition that makes it so he's never truly alone despite his newfound solitude. From here, En would express that Deku has used too much of his smokescreen quirk, as in this way, it may serve to be used against him, as it's not something he can retract or take back. And at that, we just casually get a new quirk drop from Deku, which is very interesting. Does that mean he has all the quirks at his disposal and we're just going to be seeing them trickle in here and there as the story progresses? Because again, we still don't know how his arms and legs are not just completely decimated. And so it is quite possible that Deku does in fact have all his quirks, and even if he doesn't, at the very least he must know of them all, as he has had the opportunity to converse with the past possessors, all of which were instructed by the founder to elaborate for him. But furthermore, En would express that Deku may be leaning on the power of One for All too much, causing him to make avoidable mistakes, which may be interpreted as just because you have the power doesn't mean you have to use it in its fullest at all times. Rein it in and consider its application. A sword is a lethal weapon indeed, but it is thanks to masterful hands that it has been able to afford such prestige throughout the ages. That even despite the eligibility provided by his quirklessness, he still possesses a major burden as the current wielder. That most importantly, he shouldn't let the power use his body, but instead have things be the other way around. One for All is incredible, but it should not be a crutch. That he should instead think of his quirks more like the support items he currently has in his possession, which is oh so fascinating. We have a crime radio to represent danger sense, rope indicative of Black Whip, a jetpack related to float, and a smoke bomb for his latest quirk. I'm certainly a fan of this, and if nothing else, this serves to emphasize his difference from All Might in the sense that support items never really worked for that guy. But to go into more depth about this jetpack, it's probably the most high-tech piece of equipment he has on him. So where does it come from exactly? Well, seeing as so many hero agencies have now shut down, it is possible that Deku looted it from one such unattended arsenal. If not that, well, at this point support items aren't too hard to come by these days, seeing as even civilians are able to possess them at this point. But why a jetpack? Well, if you remember back during the UA Sports Festival during the cavalry battle, Hatsume had equipped his team with a jetpack under the pretense of Uraraka's zero gravity quirk. A quirk so similar to float in personal application that it was used to help Deku in his training. So with this in mind, I can imagine why a jetpack would make sense for him. Now leaping and hopping about like an edgy rabbit, Deku had successfully suffused the surrounding area with heaps and heaps of smoke, effectively serving to limit Muscular's vision tremendously, on top of the fact that he only possesses one eye. From there, he'd hone in on his own memories of Muscular and begin to evade his attacks with Danger Sense, which is probably my new favorite ability of his, something that has only gotten cooler with this instance. And I say this because that remark about recounting their previous engagement to me implies a more precise and refined avoidance based on experience. And so the more familiar Deku may be with an adversary, the more reliable and or acute his danger sense may be. Not to mention the fact that his danger sense seemed to possess a degree of recognition when in proximity to a familiar danger in the case of Muscular, prior to the first clash of this battle, which is to imply that the range of this thing is absurd as well. I mean guys, remember when Bakugo clowned Deku for only receiving bottom of the barrel quirks? Yeah, that one for all supercharge is no joke because danger sense is amazing. But after evading so well, Deku would employ Black Whip and grip onto Muscular, and with its ridiculous strength, pull him right into a wall with ease as Deku himself remained aloft thanks to float. Now at this point, Muscular in response to this was a bit annoyed that Deku was to him using a bunch of annoying tricks. With this, Deku would swoop down and begin his interrogation in regards to the current locations of Shigaraki and All For One. And listen, between his use of Danger Sense and Black Whip, Deku is really looking like Spider-Man with the Venom suit on. But now, especially considering that shot of him standing on the gargoyle a couple chapters back, the way he dropped down here, with that mean look in his eyes, asking questions, I could not help but see my guy Batman. Muscular had no idea where Shigaraki or All For One may be and didn't really care. He was told to do as he pleases when he was freed, and that's what he's been doing. He isn't interested in small talk and instead simply wanted to go head to head with Deku. Now, despite the employ of these many new quirks, Muscular wasn't fascinated by them in the slightest. What he wants as a musclehead is a straight up strength test. And with this still restraining him with Black Whip, Deku would begin to ask Muscular why it is he does what he does, as Muscular would respond that it's how he lives his life to the fullest, which prompted Deku to ask if there's not another path he might be able to take, now using his true name as opposed to his villainous one. But just then, Muscular would refuse and begin to swell, breaking free of Black Whip's grasp. Again, he was not here to talk. But even still, Deku would recount his prior sentiments towards Shigaraki and the others that he's faced, that perhaps if he understood them, things could turn out differently. But then, he would think of Shota, who had lost his parents to this monster, a kid who now admires him greatly. He'd think of the scared child deep within the mass murderer that is Shigaraki. It's a difficult and complicated issue that, despite his good intentions, isn't something that can be figured out so soon, especially not in the midst of battle. But as expected, this is something that he'll need to consider and work through before he tries to do so with Shigaraki. Otherwise, he'll go in having no choice but to end his life. Deku would then tell Muscular that a rematch was pointless. But even still, Muscular was not backing down, as suddenly his body began to look shredded in all the wrong ways. Deku had cut the tendons of the guy's muscle fibers, that after being brutalized to such extremes, they couldn't help but unravel and tear. Deku wasn't just engaging in this fight straight on with pure physicality. He was back to his tactical analysis, as previously he had noticed Muscular's decision to attack the building instead of facing him directly, ascertaining that Shindo's vibration truly did deal a massive blow. Muscular could not be satisfied with this. He wanted a real fight, his power versus Deku's, as Deku would give him just that with a staggering hit to the gut, as he'd make it clear that this is his power. A conclusion that took him so long to come to, but now he fully embraces it, and that was the chapter. Man, shout out to Horikoshi for delivering this incredible story to us week after week. With his latest author comment, he seemed to be beating himself up over it, but no reasonable fan out there would ever condemn him for getting some much needed rest when he is able to deliver like this time and time again when he is here. He may have taken a little time off, maybe as a salute to plot armor going down, who knows, but he is back with the greatness, and so are we. As you probably noticed by now, our editing format has certainly changed following these events, and although our prior use absolutely abided by fair use practices, the failure to recognize them as such by the claimants has been enough of a nuisance to where even if we are in the right, we'd rather make the changes and not have to deal with that sort of nonsense. It's unfortunate, it's not fair, but it is what it is. For those of you who don't know, we make our own thumbnail art in-house and have been doing so since we started covering My Hero Academia. So that is what we will majorly be using for these visuals. Now, the last time we got kicked off the platform was much scarier. It was our first time dealing with that sort of thing, and we were by comparison a much smaller channel with barely any outreach. But now Now we have the entire plot army behind us, and so to us, there was absolutely nothing to fear. It was just a matter of making it back to you all and continuing our journey with you guys. Plus ultra indeed. To the plot army soldiers around the world, I hope you're ready for what is to come. The last time we got locked out, we went from 65,000 subscribers to what is now over 200,000. And so to my soldiers, rage and let the rumbling begin. If you are standing with us, if you are here for the takeover, please help us out by not only subscribing to the channel with notifications on, but by letting us know how ready you are in the comments. And while you're at it, drop a like so the algorithm doesn't try to suppress us like it did the last time we came back. We seriously missed you guys, but your support all over really warmed our hearts and kept our heads up high, and so thank you oh so very much for everything. And once again, thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Core, which you can find linked in the description below. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at PlotArmorYT to stay up to date with the current status of the channel and all the anime and manga news you could ever ask for. Because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.